So what we'd like to do now is to begin the FlyQ EFB 4.0, FlyQ Online 2.0 presentation. Thank everyone for coming today. This is just a reminder, of course, anyone who can hear me right now, this doesn't apply to. But hopefully the people who are having trouble hearing will read this, about how you can also call in if you're having trouble with computer audio. All right, before we begin the presentation about FlyQ EFB 4 Red Barn, what I'd actually like to do is to just spend a couple of minutes describing where Seattle Avionics has been in the past year. We've accomplished a lot, and I think it's worth just a couple of minutes to review so you kind of understand where we're coming from in terms of creating Red Barn. First thing is that FlyQ EFB has been the #1 rated app in the App Store, frankly, pretty much since it began. So it's been over 4 years. That's a higher rating than ForeFlight, than Garmin, than Flightplan.go, WingX, whatever it may be. It has a 4.4 out of 5 rating. So not too shabby. It also, quite recently, we got some great news from an AOPA survey that they did about a month ago, showing that we are in fact the #2 best-selling EFB application out there. #2. In other words, we're beating Garmin. We have a user base right now of more than 10,000 active pilots using some kind of our product, whether it's one of our data products, FlyQ Insight, FlyQ Pocket, or obviously FlyQ EFB or FlyQ Online. That's an awful lot of the active pilots. We've also had a fantastic year in terms of year-over-year increase. We've had a 62% increase in usage over the past year, which is, I think, pretty darn good. And of course, I need to point out that we have been around for about 15 years and we are profitable and we are growing. This year has also been interesting in that we filed patents for the first time. We actually filed, we filed one last year, but we filed 2 patents this year, and we've done a number of major releases. So we've been very, very busy. So let's talk about what Red Barn is. That's a code name for it. The first thing is, who's this made for? Who are we targeting here? Well, let me run through a little list. Do you like to fly? These are the people we're targeting. Do you like to fly? Do you like to talk about your flights? Do you like to chat about it? Do you like to, over a beer, talk with your buddy about your flight? Do you have friends who like to fly? I bet most of you are saying yes to all of these questions. Do you like to keep track of your flights just because it's interesting to do so, or obviously because the FAA kind of likes it when you do that? Do you fly 10,000 hours a year? Well, I know I don't. Do you fly 10 hours a year? That certainly applies to some people too. Are you a CFI? Are you a student pilot? Do you fly a little bit? Do you fly a lot? Are you a CAP member, Civil Air Patrol member? Are you a flying club member? Do you share a plane with somebody? If you get the point here that I've rattled off just about every type of person who flies, that's the point. The point behind Red Barn is to come up with something that has various very interesting aspects for a very large number of people. So what are we talking about here? For quite some time, FlyQ EFB and FlyQ Online have combined, well, let's think about the 3 stages of flight. Before you fly, you probably, hopefully, use a pre-flight system to check out the weather, to look what's happening around, to figure out the lowest fuel prices, things like that. A lot of interesting things that you can do by checking your flight. The most important thing, of course, obviously, is checking the weather. While you're flying the plane, you're in in-flight mode, and you're using an app like, hopefully, like FlyQ EFB, and you're navigating around on the system. What's missing, though? What's that third chunk? Right, it's post-flight. What do you do post-flight? And this is where Red Barn comes in. We said that Red Barn is going to change the way you fly. Yes, but not by adding some particular feature to FlyQ EFB that just helps you fly. It's to adding a whole new category of features to do it post-flight. So let's take a look. So again, let's kind of recap pre-flight. So in pre-flight, if you're using FlyQ Online, you can get a display like this. It has a timeline-based system that can show you how the weather will change during your flight. Like here we are at the beginning of the flight, a little bit further along, a little further along, maybe even there's an altitude slider on the left-hand side of the main window. If you tap on that, you can see what the winds are like at various altitudes. Pre-flight planning, checking weather, METARs, NOTAMs, all that kind of stuff. Or pre-flight planning in terms of your route planning. Again, this is FlyQ EFB running on a Mac, but runs on a PC as well. And here I've just typed in the flight plan, and the general concept is simply to see which flight plans have been recently approved by ATC. So this is another feature that we added recently. So that's pre-flight. In flight, of course, FlyQ EFB. This is the new buddy system that we have. It color codes different targets based on whether they're your friends or not, and so on. Gives you a good 3D version of what's on in terms of targets, what's near you. You can put plates on the approach, on the map. You can scribble on them, and so on. You can use a wind optimization system when you're flying. Put 2 fingers on the map and see where the nasty terrain is, and so on. That's in flight. So let's talk post-flight now. So what I'm going to do now is exit out of the presentation, and I'm going to go to this. Now, hopefully everyone can see this. This is my iPad running. Now, what I'm going to do, let me kind of back up perhaps just a little bit. Let's go back to the main window here. So this is probably more like what you're used to seeing on FlyQ EFB. You see a map. The tabs on the bottom have changed a little bit. You see plans, scratchpad, and so on. All of this is pretty much normal, what's been in the product for some time, except for the button I'm about to press, and that's the Flights tab. Flights is a whole new concept here. What we're doing here is something pretty darn cool. What we're trying to do is remember the whole part about, do you fly with your friends? Do you like to know what your friends are flying like? Do you want to keep track of your own flights? Okay, that's what this system is made for. Now, what I'm looking at right now, this is my friend Jeff Mirsapazzi. Jeff is an active pilot. He's been a pilot for a long time. I've known him for a long time. And what I've done here is I've set up my system. First, let me go to maybe my flights. So this is a simple test account. I'm using some made up name here. This particular account only has 1 flight on it, so not very interesting, but it's just to kind of show you what you have. So the first thing that you do when you look at your own flight is you get some summary information towards the top. So it tells you I've done 1 flight, it was 14 miles, distance was about 40 miles, and so on. Not really super interesting. It has a lot of neat social media features though, insofar as I can do things like, there's a comment that I wrote to it. They wrote creatively, this is a comment. There are other comments in the system too. You can do likes, all of that. You can even take the map. If you want to see where that flight went, there's a tiny map button next to where it says Sean Lamont. I'm going to hit the map button, and that's what that map actually looks like. So that was a track of that particular flight. I can play that flight as well. So now the flight is actually playing on here. Probably more interesting if you were, say, in split screen mode. Okay, so when you're in split screen, I can take a look at the flights and so on, see it moving on the track as you go. Let me, by the way, minimize this just in the background. I'm sorry, I forgot to clean up my screen first. So you do see an awful lot of stuff on the screen. So my apologies for that. Let's go back to being on full screen. Now this is just my stuff though. So one of the really interesting things here, by the way, let me point this out too. This demo is in 2 parts. FlyQ EFB and FlyQ Online 2.0 both share the Red Barn technology. So some of this demo is going to be covering material on FlyQ EFB on the iPad. Some of the presentation is going to cover it with FlyQ Online. So we're going to have a mix of that so you can see that the system works on both. So first, let me take that tab that currently says My Flights, and I'm going to flip that over to Flight Following. So flight following doesn't exactly mean flight following in the traditional sense. It means who are the kind of people that you are following how they fly. So I see my friend Jeff. I see various flights that he's made, and so on. So Jeff's been doing quite a bit of flying. You shouldn't be the only person I'm following though, but we'll check on that later. So it's a lot of things on here. Again, you can go in and see some more details. So if I want to know, let me see, Jeff has actually been taking some really interesting flights. He's been in Florida a lot, like this one. So if I wanted to know some more information about that flight, I just tap anywhere in the cell, and this is where the logbook part comes in. So there are a number of tabs when you look at the detail of a flight. The first tab is data. So the data fields were automatically pre-filled by the flight recorder. I should point this out. We've had something like 400,000 flights recorded since the flight recorder was put into the product. That was about a year ago in FlyQ EFB 3.0. 400,000 flights. Now, all of those flights are stored in the cloud, and the fun part about that is they can now be actually analyzed. You can do something with them besides looking at the map. So I immediately know Jeff doesn't actually know anything about this product yet. So this information came automatically from the server. I know the ident of his aircraft. I know he flies a Mooney, an M20P. You can type in remarks, number of takeoff. It basically pre-fills all the data for a logbook that you would want, but of course you can manually modify it. So for example, if you wanted to log time as a CFI, I can hit the edit button in the upper right corner. By the way, the edit button is there so you don't inadvertently modify something. And of course, you normally can't modify a flight that is not yours. So that's a little bug right now in this beta. This is not quite ready for prime time yet. So I will also point out that in the event that the app crashes, please don't take it as to meaning that the app doesn't work. It simply means we're not quite done with it yet. But so far that hasn't happened yet. So the concept here is that you can add information to the flight doing it this way. You can also take a look at photographs and some other things, but there isn't a whole lot of information here on Jeff's. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the really powerful search feature that's in the product. So now there's a new search bar towards the top of the screen, not the main one at the very top of the screen, but a secondary one just for the red barn features. It says search friends, airport, tail number. That's where kind of the fun really begins here. So for example, if I want to see all the flights that have come from Payne Field, I can type in KPA, looks like none of them. Where is he based? Let's try a couple of other airports. Hopefully there's some in here. I'm gonna reset that. And let's check out Sean's flight. So for the flight for Sean, for example, I can find somebody by name, just like that, quite easily, easy to do. Let's see who else is in the system. Okay, not a lot. The other thing that you can do besides some of the searching, and I'll show you more of the searching in FlyQ Online. Some of the other things that you can do is you can change the time period. So these are flights that have been done, forever. I can change that to like last week, this month, last month, maybe the last 90 days. So you can use that handy time filter just by hitting that button and now it says last 90 days to filter your results so that you can quickly find things. You can also search by title. So for example, a lot of the flights that we look at are morning flights. So I believe this works. So there. Now you can find all the morning flights that Jeff took because it searched it by the title. Of course, you could type in Jeff or Jeffrey and would find him as well. So an awful lot of very cool ways of looking at this. Okay. So some other things that you can do with this is this is one of my favorite features actually. I'm going to set the time period back to all time. So one of the things we were trying to shoot for here was to come up with this kind of a social media / visual logbook. And by visual logbook, we really mean that it should be something that's, well, visual. So I'm going to rotate my iPad here for a second, and I believe this works. Okay, so the iPad is now rotated, and the reason why I'm doing that is I'm going to put it into split screen mode. So right now I'm looking at, let's reset my filter to be all. So right now I'm looking at, it looks like a total of 85 flights. Notice what's on the map though. There's a color coding system. This is what we call a heat map. So this shows us, and this is, I think, extremely cool. This shows you by color where red is the most. Let's see where the red ones are. I don't even know where that is, but we color code all these different airports. These are all the different airports that are in the result set. So these are all the airports we have 85 flights right now in the system representing a couple of different people. And this gives us a good sense of where people are flying to. Green means fewer people. Yellows and reds mean more people, okay, is the way the system works. So very cool way of knowing where people fly. When we're done with the product, it'll be set up so that you can tap on it and actually see who flew there, what their flights were, and so on. Do quite a bit more filtering, okay? So other things that you can do, if I tap on this little action button here, I can add a photo to my flight. This is where, at the beginning of the presentation, I talked about CFIs. I'll show you a little bit more about this in a second. But this is how you can send an endorsement. So if, for example, I'm logged in as me, as Steve Podrachik, and if I were a flight instructor, which I'm not, and I wanted to send an endorsement to Jeff, I can just hit that button and do it. I don't have to have his iPad in front of me. I don't have to be looking at his copy of FlyQ EFB. All I do is kind of like using Facebook. I get a notification in the system that tells me that my friend Jeff took a flight. And if Jeff were my student, then all that I need to do is to go in and give them an endorsement. And I'll show you how to do that too. You can also do a lot of social media sharing, and you can even share the track by saying share GPS with systems to do even more analysis like Cloud Ahoy, okay? All right, so a lot of things that you can do with a system like that. Now, what I'd like to do now is to do some of the rest of the demo using FlyQ Online. So this is what FlyQ EFB does. Again, the main things that we have added here are the abilities to do an awful lot more detail. Oh, wait, well, one more thing while I'm at it too. So I'm gonna reset this back to Sean. So I'm just gonna filter this to say Sean. And here's a flight that he took. There's a comment that someone added here. If I tap on this, now I can take, I've already shown you how that you can look at idents and so on. You can also look at photographs that you attach to the flight. And if you click on any of those, you see them much larger. You can even send those. You can share the image with somebody. So if you really like that image, you can email it, you can post it to Facebook, you can copy it, you can print it, do whatever you like to do. So that's what photos are like. Also, analysis. Now, this is, I think, one of the best parts. We said that this product is designed for people who fly a lot as one of the things. So we talked about CFIs, we talked about people who are very social about their flying, but here's one of the other things that's really unique about this product. In fact, I'm going to take it out of split screen mode now to show this to you. So since we're collecting all of this data, we can create a series of graphs and tables based on engine performance and so on. So let me show you some of the details here. So if I tap on ground speed versus flight time, this shows me a graph of a particular, I have to point out, this is actually data that was made up for this demo. This wasn't system generated. So in this particular case, we're taking a look at a flight that began at Painfield in the Seattle area, then flew south to PDX in Portland. So what it's showing us over the course of about this 80-minute flight or so, what our ground speed was like as we were flying. So that can be generated, and you'll see graphs like this built into FlyQ EFB 4.0 because that's just generated based on GPS information. Some of the other graphs, though, require a bit more. Right now, FlyQ EFB can actually access data from a Dynon Skyview system, and it can access data from an Avidyne system. Those are very, very powerful systems. Today, FlyQ only uses that to get GPS, AHRS, and to get a little bit more stuff to get ADS-B data. So a good amount of information, but both of those systems can actually provide us with quite a lot more. Outside air temperature, fuel flow, RPM, engine temperatures, and so on. So this is an example of the kind of information that we'll be able to provide to really help you with your post-flight analysis once we get past 4.0 and come up with version 4.1. This is be tied into the data feeds that we get from more sophisticated in-panel systems like the Avidyne and like the Dynon systems. Other graphs that you can do, you can take a look at things like just engine temperature versus flight time. You can take a look at RPM versus flight time. So of course, you know that when you're beginning the flight, you're going to be revving pretty high. When you're coming close to landing, you're bringing it back quite a bit. Engine temperature. Notice that when you're at cruise, your engine temperature, your CHT, is starting to really drop on this. You can really use this very effectively to try to decide whether or not there's some issues that you have, and if you need to address anything, maybe from a maintenance perspective. You can also, it doesn't just do graphs, it also automatically generates tables. So this is that same flight, it's about 80 minutes. So in one easy to read table, I now see some very interesting information about my altitude, my RPM, my CHT, my EGT, all of that's on the screen and can be analyzed. Of course, you can also export that data to, say, Excel or something like that if you want to do your own analysis. So this is what we mean by graphs and analysis. And this is something that we think will appeal to those of you who put a lot of time into your plane, to own your own plane, who really worry about the performance and the maintenance of your plane. Okay, so there's lots of these graphs that you can look at. You know, I love this one. You can do two variables and so on. Okay. You can also add comments to the system. Again, this is a test account, so this isn't particularly realistic, but you can use this bar down the bottom that says write a comment. So you can write lots of comments. Looks like people are writing some very interesting ones. Again, it's just a test account. Okay, my comment was, this is a comment. Michael Prime, friend of mine, wrote, "This is totally awesome," and so on. Okay. So there's a lot that you can do here. You can imagine that now FlyQ EFB isn't going to be something that you just use when you fly, but it'll give you notification when your friends take a flight. You can take a look at what they did. If you wanted to know, for example, where they were in the map, again, hit one button and you see what their flight looked like and so on. So pretty cool stuff. That's what's built into FlyQ EFB 4.0. There's a lot more to it though, but I'm going to actually get rid of that, and I'm going to go on to FlyQ Online. So give me a second for this to come up. I'm going to go to this right here. Okay, so this is FlyQ Online 2.0. It's a little bit different than what. That was my iPad deciding it wanted to get in the way again. Okay, so a lot of things I can do here, but the first thing I want to do is just go into the Flights tab. So we're loaded now on this one with a little bit different account. In fact, I'm actually going to log out of this account. So I'm going to log out. And I'm going to log back in as a slightly different user. Because it's really kind of silly, to be honest with you, to look at my actual account, because it's just a lot of test information in it. Not really real flights for the most part. So I'm going to log in. Now when I hit the Flights tab, it takes it on FlyQ Online, it takes it a few seconds to load the flights, but not too bad. So here we have a very similar display. We see the flights taken, slightly different group of users. Looks like Mike's been taking a lot of flights here. Looks like my other instance, my doppelganger, has been taking some flights. I think though we have more people on here too. So I'm going to take a look, see if there's any flights on here for my friend Linda. Yep. So Linda's on here. So here are some of the flights that she took. Or, I'm not sure if I added Mike. Okay, so these are some more flights. Now I should talk a little bit about the filtering here. So for example, the filtering is actually extraordinarily powerful. It isn't just typing in one thing. For example, if I want to find all the flights that were made from Payne Field, I can type PAE or KPAE. Notice here, for example, Linda took a flight that began at Whiskey 10 and ended at Payne Field, versus Mike, who began at Payne and then ended at some other point, and so on. So right now we immediately know that based on the filter criteria, we have 5 flights which have taken place either to or from Payne Field. That's all time. If I set that to last week, we get, I think, nothing probably. If we set that to maybe last month, still nothing. Maybe last 90 days, and so on. So the time filtering, notice it's extremely fast. Now, what if though I want to know about flights that had something to do with either Payne or with Renton, RNT, another airport? By typing in PA, in fact, I'm going to do that. I'm going to type all the caps because it's a little bit easier to read. So if I type in PAE RNT, they'll find all the flights, and there are 4 of them it looks like, they've had something to do with Renton, like this one, or Payne, but obviously not both. If I had a flight, let me just take something here. Like, you can also do something kind of interesting though. You can type in RNT-AWO. What that means is find flights that are from Renton to Arlington. So if I now hit the return key, thought that worked. No, maybe that particular one doesn't work. But other things that you can do that are kind of fun here or kind of helpful. So you can type in, if you want to find all of the flights that took anything to do with Arlington, but also involved Michael, none of those. So where's he flying from? I think S50. So I type in S50 and Michael. So that when you have 2 different types of searches, like one by name and one by airport identifier, it ends those together, meaning that you have to have one or more of the airports. Like right now we have, the search stuff is very sophisticated, but just kind of does what you would expect it to do if you think about it for a second. So it looks like Michael has had a total of 13 flights. See that here? 13 flights that have had something to do with S50. What if I add Renton here, or if I add Seattle, or if I add AWO? See if that number goes up a little. Yep, now it's 15. So what we've done here is we take a look at all of the airports that you type in, and we order those logically. So if you flew to any of those airports and your name is Michael, you find that. Or maybe instead of searching for Michael, you want to just look by the title of the flight, like morning flights. So it looks like he's done 8 morning flights. How about in the afternoon? He's done 7 in the afternoon, and so on. Oh, and this is all within the last 90 days. We set that back to all time. So the point behind this is that the filtering is very, very powerful, very easy to use. You can type in email addresses, you can type in the names of your friends, you can type in airport identifiers, you can type in airport pairs, you can type in title of the flight, all kinds of things that you can do. So if you want to find particular flights, like let's say you were planning on flying to Renton and you've never flown them before, if some of your friends have, then you can just type RNT into the search box and maybe take a look at Linda's flights or Michael's flights in some detail and do that. So a lot that you can do. Now, right now, I've just looked at information from a couple of different people. So one of the questions that you may have is, well, that's great, but how do I connect myself to all of my friends? Well, you do that by going to the friends box. So right here, it says friends. So this is what we call the friends list. So it will show you who are you following. Looks like I'm following Linda and I'm following Michael. Nobody is checking my flight, so nobody is following me. The system can also give you suggestions. Like what it would do is if it knows your home airport, it would use that to automatically find people who are in your area who might be flying. And if not that, it'll find all the people who are in the general vicinity, or rather who fly a lot, and ask you to fly them. So you may look at this and you'll say, well, oh, OS9, I know that airport. That's around here. Tell me about Jeff Dow. So if I click on Jeff, I see some information is going to get pulled up about Jeff. Now, just a little bit of information though. I know he flies a Vans. I know his tail number, his home airport. I know he's logged an awful lot of flights on the system, 704 flights. The vast majority, all of that's really been his PIC time. He's been flying for about 83 hours and covered over 16,000 feet, 16,000 nautical miles. You can look at flights that he's made, his last 3 flights. It doesn't list all of them here, and so on. You can go back. Now, one of the things though is, let's say that right now I'm logged in as me. So if I want to take a look at my own profile, so I'm going to hit the My Profile button here. And now I have a few more things which are available to me. So some of the things that it has on here that are pretty interesting is it has information about flight privacy. So let's talk about that. So in FlyQ EFB 3.0, when we introduced a data recorder, we made it possible for you in the app to say you never wanted your data sent to the cloud. That's still there. And in that case, all the data that you have is totally private to you, totally private to your machine. It's not even sent between your machines. It literally sits on your iPad or on your iPhone. Okay, very, very straightforward. What we've added now, though, is the ability to restrict that a little bit more for flight stuff, like your actual flight plans in particular. And there are 3 modes to it. You can set yourself up as public, semi-private, or private. So what does that mean? A public profile means that somebody can type in your name and search for it. They can look up flights. You can add, anybody can add, set it up such that they can follow your flights and so on. Semi-private is an interesting switch. What semi-private does, well, let me actually explain maybe the bottom one. Explain private. Private means that your flights are completely hidden from the rest of the world. You can look at it from any machine that you've logged onto, but you can't do much else. Okay, so when you log in that way, your flights are just for you. You can share it on your iPad, your iPhone, and so on, but nobody else can look at them. The one in the middle is pretty interesting though. It's called semi-private. With semi-private mode, it means that other people can find you when they do a search, but they can't tell much about you. They see gross statistics like how many flights you've taken, but they can't see really anything else. So what they see there, they can't take a look at your particular flights, that kind of thing. And what they can do though is they can't follow you, but they can request to follow you. So by requesting to follow you, that means that a message is sent to you and you can either accept them if you know them, or you can reject them. It's entirely up to you. So that's the way that the profile stuff works in the product. I can go back here. Again, let's just kind of take a look at the list here. At flight following, all the different things that you can do. There's also an import button up here where you can import a log file from other systems. That doesn't work right now in the beta, so I'm not going to show it to you. You can also use the button next to it, the add button. The add button, and by the way, all of the features I'm showing you in FlyQ Online also work on FlyQ EFB. I just wanted to split up the presentation between the two pieces. So the add button here lets you manually enter a flight. So if you weren't using the data recorder, or if you had a flight that you used, God forbid, some other product for, so you don't have the data for it, you can hit the add button and then simply type in the data just as you would with any other logbook. So very straightforward, very easy to do. One more thing, if I go into the profile list, by the way, you can change your photo, you can delete your photo and so on. Of course, it only works when it's you, so you can't go into your friend's account and change their photos on them or anything like that. You also have a little bit more information here. For example, I have my reports button. What does that do? Well, the reports button is only available at the moment for you and your flights. So let's go into that. So when I take a look at the reports, I can look at various text reports, kind of all the basic summaries. I can look at graphs, and I can look at tables. So let's take a look at some of the graphs. Now the difference here, notice that there's still a search button and a time frame at the top here. So you can set up a custom date range, or you can say this week, or whatever you want it to be. So you can search on this, and you can also search by aircraft type. So say that you want to see a graph that tells you how much time you have in a 172. You can type in C170, I'm not going to do this, but you can type in C172, or you can type in C172, C182, and get reports and graphs based on flying either a 172 or a 182, or a PA-28, or wherever you want to fly. Okay. You can also say, well, I want to report for how many times basically I've flown into PWT, into Bremerton Airport. You can do that as well. So there's a lot you can do, but I'm just going to keep kind of the basics here. So on some of the graphs, I can take a look at statistics. Now, I showed you what graphs were like on per flight. So you can see over the course of a particular flight, how your engine was doing, what your speed was like, what your RPMs were, and so on. But this one takes all of your flights together and aggregates it. So I'm going to look at my flights per month category right here. So when I look at this, I can clearly see that living in Seattle, I don't fly a lot in the wintertime. In January, February, March, November, December, it looks like what I'm really doing there is not flying, let's put it that way. So if I want to know what my top airports were, what airports am I flying to a lot? Well, I'm based in Payne Field, so not surprisingly, the most popular airport for me to fly to is in fact Payne Field, but I also happen to live closer to Boeing Field near Seattle. So I also fly into BFI or Renton, which is right next door. These are all airports basically in the Seattle vicinity. So a lot you can do there. You can take a look over time what altitudes you fly at. So it's kind of interesting. So what this is telling me is that I'm generally flying higher in the winter to stay in some cases in Seattle. It's a little tricky to do this, but try to stay above the crud, but not so high enough that I have to worry about icing. It looks like I took one flight in July that I pretty much pushed the envelope of a 172 to maximum. And I think that was probably on a flight where I was trying to get over some very high terrain. So there was a reason for that. You can take a look at how your exhaust gases are going at your EGT graph. So again, by month you can see that, or see how your RPMs are. Now that's really interesting though, because it does let you take a look at it and think, well, is there some issue with my engine? Is there something I ought to be worried about? And so on. I can also look at some tables. So if I don't want to look at the graph, I can pull up my monthly activity as a table here, and I can see where I've been flying, how many flights I've been. This is obviously the base data that went into the graphs as well. So here I can take a look at on a month-by-month basis what my flights were like and so on. What the average, these are all averages. My average altitude, average RPM, average engine temperatures, and so on. All of that's right there and searchable. So I can hit the back button, go back. And one other thing I'd like to add, actually, let's take a look at friends. Let's add some more people. So I'm going to type in, let's see, so who am I following right now? Linda and Michael. Okay, I'm going to add a couple more people. I'm going to search for, so if I type in Mike as a search, well, that doesn't really work too well because there are at least 2,000 people in the system named Mike. So that's not super useful. So hopefully I'm getting enough of his name spelled right here. There we go. So here's a friend of mine also named Mike, as opposed to Michael. So he flies out of Boeing Field. Again, I can see some information about him. He flies a 177 Cardinal. Great. Okay. And looks like he's flown pretty recently. He had a couple of flights, 3 flights actually, taken on the 27th. So I'm going to hit the button that goes from not following to following. And who else do I want to follow? So I think in this case, I wasn't following my friend Jeff. So I'm going to type in Jeff also. I don't have to type in his full name, by the way. I can just type in enough of his last name to get the general idea. So I'm going to follow him. And now it should load the list back for my following list. All right, so I'm now following Jeff, Linda, Mike, and Michael. Okay, so actually, let's add somebody else. Let's add a friend of mine from a different part of the country, Robert McGuire. Not Mike McGuire, but Robert. Okay, so now it has to reload the flights. On FlyQ Online, this does take it a little bit to do. So you have to give it a little bit of time for it to reload, but I think you can see those pretty fast. So there are the flights from Mike, from Jeff. Oh, that's a cool flight. Right, that's neat. So that's kind of the fun part to this, is that you can take a look at the flights that your friends took and give them comments, give them awards, give them thumbs up, all that kind of good stuff baked into it. You can run reports on it. You can look at statistics. There's just an awful lot that you can do with the system. Oh, one more thing that you can do with it. Let's say that I was a flight instructor, which I'm not, but if I was and I want to give Jeffrey some kind of a flight endorsement, I can hit these little buttons here to play, put it on the map, and so on. This is my action button. Now here, what I can do is I can either send or receive an endorsement. What does that mean? When it's your flight and you hand your iPad over to your instructor can hit you can hit on the iPad receive endorsement, which means that someone is going to give something to you but type it in on your iPad or your iPhone. Here though, I'm going to send the endorsement to Jeff. And that means, of course, that I'm the CFI, Jeff is a student pilot, and I'm going to send him something. So I'm going to hit send endorsements. And here we go. So it pre-fills in the data for me. So I see Jeff, I see me, I see my fictitious CFI number, today's date, my expiration date, and so on. You can preload in your signature so you don't have to sign it every time. We have a whole category of different endorsements. So you can look at student pilot endorsements, solo flight, cross-country flight, and so on. You can look at your private pilot endorsements. You can look at your instrument endorsements, and so on. And then you hit the create button. This doesn't work yet, so I can't show this to you. But you hit the endorse button, and then what it does is something that I think is very, very useful. If you're a CFI, you know that you're supposed to keep track of the endorsements that you give. So of course your student keeps track of it, but you have to keep track of it as well. So what the system does is when you create the endorsement, it creates a graphical image very similar to the sticker that you may put into somebody's logbook. And then based on that sticker, a copy of that sticker goes to your account in FlyQ, and it also goes, of course, to the person you send it to. So both of you can take a look at it inside your logbook. So it's just there kind of automatically. I'm going to do one more thing too. I just want to show one small thing too. I'm going to log out I'm going to log back in again as another user, which is also me. Again, it'll take it a few seconds to load up the flights. Probably about 10 seconds or so, give or take. The speed on this is somewhat dependent upon your web browser. There's simply a lot of data going through the system to do this. So usually it takes it on something like Chrome not very long to do. So I'm going to go back into my account, look at my own profile here. Yeah, okay. So again, you can change the photo. You can see I have a whole lot of flights associated with it and so on. So there's a lot of things that you can look here. I'm going to try one other account also, which is a very strange thing to do, granted, but remember that this is just a test account. So I'm going to go into this account, check out flights, and this one should load faster. I'll load in Sean's account. And here you notice that it also keeps track when you take a look at your profile. If you have any photos associated with any of your flights, all the photos get aggregated together in one spot like that. And if you want to take a look at this in larger view, you just tap on it. And you can see it quite a bit larger here. So all of that information is available to you in FlyQ online. And again, all of this data that you're looking at, all of the information that I presented today, you can get through your iPad using FlyQ EFB 4.0, or you can do this from the comfort of your desktop on either, in this case, a Mac or on a PC. And there you go. So I'm going to close this down. There we go. So I'm going to quit Chrome and go back to the presentation here. Okay, so again, let's try and recap what I just showed today with the red barn. What we've done here is this is a very visual logbook with easy and powerful filtering. Remember what I meant by visual. In this case, visual means that it draws on the map all the places that you've flown. You can play them back on the map. So you can do it either in 2D or in 3D mode, by the way. You can play back any flight that either you took or that your friends took. You can take a look at a heat map showing all the places using different colors to represent all the places where you and or your friends have flown. So it's not just a logbook with the standard reporting and so on, but it also is a visual logbook. It has a very powerful social media aspect to it. So just like when you go into your local FBO and you meet up with some friends, you can look at their flights, you see a notification about it on your phone, you can see it immediately. You can write a comment, great landing, terrific, wow, that scenery is terrific. What was the restaurant like? I've always wanted to go there. Whatever the comment may be. You can like a flight and so on. Very, very powerful, very unique social aspect to it. So it's essentially a social network built directly in for the 100,000 or so people who are using a FlyQ product, not for everyone else who uses, say, Facebook. Extraordinarily easy system for CFIs and students to keep track of each other. So again, let's kind of recap this. If you're a CFI and you hook your account in to your student pilots, what that basically means is whenever your student pilots take a flight, you get an alert and you get a copy of their flight automatically put onto your phone or your iPad. You can review it, you can play it back, you can put it on the map, you can take a look at the statistics from it, and so on. If they've met a particular milestone, they're ready for solo flight, they're ready for cross country and so on, you just do one tap and you can instantly add an endorsement to it so that they are ready to go for the next stage in their career. That's the endorsements. For those of you who perhaps aren't CFIs, but who do an awful lot of flying, again, you can do extraordinarily detailed analysis. You can take a look at a detailed analysis of your flight on a per flight basis or over any predefined time period. You can set filter parameters, and it's not like some big database search where you have lots of different fields to type in and check boxes and all kinds of goofy stuff. It's more like using Google. You pretty much just type in what you want, the airports, the types of planes, the tail numbers, the names of users, whatever you want. And it automatically creates reports and shows you information just based on what you've typed in. So you can take a look at engine temperature, you can look at RPM, you can take a look at speed. We envision when it's hooked into Avidyne or hooked into Dynon, you can take a look at outside air temperature, you can take a look at fuel flow. All those kind of great things are part of the analysis package that's built into the post-flight system in FlyQ EFB. You can take any flight that you have, and of course you can, as you could before, you could take that flight and export it to a system like CloudAhoy or just to Google Earth if you want to, and play back the flight. Or you can play back the flight in either 2D mode, I didn't show this, I should have, or in 3D mode right on your iPad. And of course you can create very, very detailed graphs, very detailed tables, print out standard reports that you can use to give to your flight instructor or give to the FAA analysis, to the FAA examiner, whatever. So there's a lot of information, and the key point behind FlyQ EFB is it's way better with friends. The point behind FlyQ EFB 4.0 Red Barn is that flying isn't, if you take a look at any existing iPad app out there, the iPad is just kind of one with a pilot, and it's a standalone thing. But flying really isn't like that. As you probably know, most of the flights that folks take tend to be with other people in the plane, whether it's another pilot or a family or friends or whatever it may be. So the whole social aspect of flying is what we're really promoting with FlyQ EFB 4.0 and FlyQ Online 2.0. That's the end of my presentation. And if you missed any of the presentation, because hopefully all of you got an email on this, but basically we had a little problem in that the number of people who wanted to see the presentation was 2.5 times more than the total number of people who the GoToMeeting software that we use. It's a massive, huge company that produces this thing, but their limitation is only to 1,000 people actually logging in. So that's why we sent out an email this morning to everyone saying, if you have trouble logging in today, and I imagine many, many people did, because it looks like that 1,000 number has been pretty much pegged for the entire presentation. So if you had any trouble watching this, or if you logged in halfway or something, there's a presentation that's an hour earlier tomorrow. That means 3 p.m. Pacific time. And the URL on the screen is what you would type in, or you should have this already in your, hopefully you have this in an email as well. And if you don't have it in email, you can check out our blog, which just go to seattleavionics.com and hit the blog button at the top of the screen. It also has this link to sign up for tomorrow's presentation. I should point out too that Black Friday is coming up in a couple of days. It's coming up on Friday. Traditionally, Seattle Avionics has had one devil of a great Black Friday deal. And we always do something a little different every year. And there's a theme this year. The theme is flying with friends. The theme is lots of people, that the whole system is more fun when you're using it with your friends. So the specials that we're doing this Black Friday have a lot to do with getting a whole lot more people to use FlyQ EFB. And you'll see why. They're fantastic deals for both existing customers and for new customers, and I think you're really going to like them. For those of you who are on this webinar today, or people who signed up for the early announcement, you'll get an email from us in about 27 hours. So a little bit, so sometime tomorrow evening, you'll get an email giving you special first access to the Black Friday specials. And that's important because the deals are really good. And we simply can't offer them to too many people. So we give the people who took the time to watch these presentations or to sign up for the early notification, you get first crack. And then the rest of the folks have a chance to get the Black Friday deals on the following day, that is Wednesday morning, but you will have a chance to get it Tuesday night. So that is the presentation. I'm going to leave it logged in right now because I'm assuming that we have lots more questions. It looks like we still have a huge number of people who are logged in. So just going to leave that running for a little bit, but I appreciate everyone's time. I know that especially on the East Coast, it's getting a little bit late. On the West Coast, those of you who are still at work are probably leaving work relatively soon. So there's just a lot going on here. So I'm personally going to log off. I'm going to leave the presentation running. Again, my name is Steve Pedrachik. I'm the CEO of Seattle Avionics, and I truly appreciate all the time that you took spending this evening with us. I've enjoyed it, and thank you very much.